I didn't see a way out. And I thought, I don't know if we can keep doing this. I don't know if I can keep doing this. And so just the stress of wondering, if we don't get this check in, or these couple checks in, like we're going to have to be a couple days late on payroll.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of families.
Yeah.
Where you and I, we could miss a payroll or two probably because we could, obviously my spouse works, so we could do that. But some of our people, they can't.
Yeah.
And that's a stressor. I mean, that's got to be the number one thing, I think, that when I talk to people, that's their biggest fear.
Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Through the Dip, the show where we talk to entrepreneurs and business owners to learn about the lessons that they learned from navigating their company through the dip. My name is Steven Souter, and this episode is brought to you by Hustlefish. On today's episode, Brian Town and how he overcame what he calls the resistance. Now, the resistance is something that is familiar to all of us. It's that little critic in the back of your head that tells you you can't do it. It's that feeling in the morning when you don't want to get out of bed and do the things that you need to do, even if you know that you might be able to do it, but there's that question that's just sitting there, wondering if you're good enough, wondering if you can. And that's something that I'm super familiar with in running my own business, but also in trying to start this podcast. There's all these times where you're just filled with self-doubt and it just feels like you're pushing against something. But in my chat with Brian today, he talks about how seeing it and how naming it is so powerful. It gives you something to actually fight against. Now, Brian started his career in video production and then became a teacher before starting his own marketing agency. This is Brian Town's story of facing the resistance and overcoming that self-critic inside of you.
Back then, 2011, this incubator space and this entrepreneurship thing at Michigan State was just kind of, becoming more popular. Of course, there's always been entrepreneurs and there's always been small business, right? But, back then, Michigan State was really starting to get it. And so they set up something in East Lansing called the TIC, which is the Technology Innovation Center. And it was a shared office space.
Okay.
Kind of, for back then, relatively new. And so it was a super cool building. It was just across the street from campus, and it had offices in this just, concrete floor, high ceilings, kind of cool. That's pretty common today. And Jeff Smith, who was working for the city back then, and anybody who knows anything about small business in this area or entrepreneurship, the name Jeff Smith, they will know him. And he was my first call because I had was working with some other people on a business sort of. We had an office there and my first call was to him, say, hey man, I need an office space. And for like $300 a month, we had this office that looked like we knew what we were doing. We had parking, everything that we needed. Plus we were surrounded by other people that were doing the same thing or had already done the same thing. And so that was kind of my first move. And I remember that first month going, yeah, this is great. I'm my own small business owner. And then I was like, a month later, I was like, okay, now what?
Did you get your first client within that?
Yeah,
in that month?
I think so. I think we had somebody from before that I was kind of doing side gigs. I think we had a video client, so we were doing a little bit of work, but I didn't have much. I had a computer, and I had it was a Canon, small Canon digital video camera.
Okay.
And a tripod and a light kit.
Wow.
And so, from there, then I remember that moment because I called my sister and Karen, and she's older and she's a professor down in Georgia. And I remember going, all right, I don't know if I did the right thing. Like, it's not going like I thought. Like, I didn't know anything about sales. I didn't know anything about marketing.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, I built a website. I should show you my first logo. Really bad. And but kind of knew what I wanted. I knew the type of business I wanted. But I remember calling her and I was like, hey man, that's not going as well. She's like, well, listen, keep going. You can always go back and teach. I mean, and that for me was like, okay, it's not the end of the world. I have a master's degree. I can always get a job. So I kind of dug in at that moment and I was like, what do I want?
Yeah.
As a company, not what services do we want to do necessarily, but what do I want in a company? And that's when, and I tell this story in the book, but this story still today is, I think, the pivotal moment for our company, and the pieces of it are still around today.
what did you want? Or I guess before you started,
Yeah.
what were you trying to build? Like when you were like, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to build an agency. Was it just, were you thinking you're just going to be a solo person, or were you going to build this huge, massive agency, or what was the goal?
Yeah, of course I was massive agency,
Yeah.
right? Right in the beginning. I mean, that's always my dream, to have tons of employees and make a difference in their lives. Like that was my goal, is I wanted to make a difference in two things. One, I wanted to improve the lives of people that work there. And two, I wanted to improve our state. And that's, if you look at our marketing today and our marketing back then, our marketing slogan back then was something like, and it's kind of cheesy now, I still have the old posters, but like, we create, you grow, Michigan prospers, or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, because Michigan Creative, it was the name. And so I really felt that if we did our work right, then these small businesses and businesses we were working with were going to help and grow, and they would hire more people, and then Michigan would, and that was kind of our MO. I mean, it still is today. But, I remember after I talked to my sister, start looking up what is a good company. I ran across this site called Centro, and this guy named Sean Reckenzer, and reading Centro was a media buying company. They're still around today. They changed their name to Basis, but they're huge, right? They were big back then too. And I remember I come across this website just by Google searching, and I found his manifesto, and his manifesto spoke to me. And it was just like, everything he talked about was how they need to be good leaders, how they need to support their people to make their people better. And it was, everything that was their responsibility as leaders to make sure that everyone was taken care of and everyone was motivated and helped and felt like they were an important part of the company. And I was like, oh my God, like manifesto, so cool. Like, 'cause I'm a creative dude, and I was like, man, I want to use this. And so I emailed them and I said, hey, is there any chance? And I thought, there's no way in hell, right? Can I use this? Can I, I'd started a company. I kind of told my story, and she's like, absolutely. Sean loves when people use this. He wants to spread this to everyone. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And I said, if I can talk to him, that'd be great. Never thought I'd be able to talk to him, but sure enough, we got a meeting set up and I got to talk to him for like a half hour. And that conversation was great. And he was at the airport. He's like, hey man, Sean, I'm at Heathrow. I'm like, oh, here's his fancy pants. Yeah. But he wasn't, man. He was just like me. And
What'd you ask him?
so I asked him, I said, hey man, I'm doing this. It's not going like I thought it would. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm telling people all these dreams and things that I want. Like, how do I do this? He's like, I said, you're probably super successful because you started this media company in Chicago. He's like, no, man. He's like, literally my buddy and I kind of started this out of the basement, and we started with the manifesto and we came up with that. He's like, if we were a shoe company today, we'd be the best shoe company in the world because of that. And he's like, keep telling people, because I would tell people, and I remember some guy that we were going to try to partner with kind of made fun of us, or he was kind of like, oh, that's dumb. When I kept telling that story of like, what I see for this company is a place where everyone has a voice, where we're creating, a great leader makes everyone around him or her better than they are. Like, I wanted to improve people's lives in the company, where secondarily was our customers. And, they were whatever. And Sean's like, keep telling that story. They're going to think, who's this guy in a mismatched suit? Cause I had a suit jacket and it was a little bit of a different black than my pants. I just remember because somebody pointed it out at an event, and I'm like, damn it.
Oh, man.
Yeah. But he's like, keep telling that story. He's like, if we stuck to our manifesto. And so from there, I recreated the manifesto. It's very similar to his, but it has more of our flavor to it. And then from that, we wrote our core values. And the core values that we wrote back then are exactly the same as they are today, except that we just added one more. And I think that moment for me made me stick in it, and here we are 14 years later. To talk to this guy and have him spend time with me when I was no one to him.
Yeah.
And from there I started studying other people like him, like Zingerman's, and those guys had that same philosophy of, Zingerman's philosophy is the cook can become the owner of the restaurant, or can become the manager of the restaurant. And, I set out to do that mostly just because of my educational background, but we've had people start here as interns, part-time people who are either still here now, or because of the experience they have here, they've got, a great job somewhere else. And so yeah, I mean, that was kind of it, and then at that point we kind of had to figure out what we wanted to do and what our brand was. And, we kind of figured it out from there.
How do you balance taking care of employees with profitability and making money? Because I feel like sometimes those things run at odds with each other.
Yeah, I'm really bad at that. And, uh, and I'm really, I think I've let people take advantage of us, I think, in that scenario. I'm pretty, happy with the team that we have now. I've always been happy with the team, but I think this group of people that we have are, um, secondarily to their skills. Like, I think they're some of the best skilled
Mm.
people in the business. They're just really good, honest, hardworking people that I trust. And we have a very lenient work policy and a very overly lenient vacation policy,
Mhm.
but no one really takes advantage of it. And so, yeah, I think I'm much better at that than I was before. And we have a structured program. Like, I'm a creative person. I hate structure, but we have, quarterly meetings with our employees one-on-one. We have ratings and reviews and those kind of things. So that helps. But yeah, I've kept people way too long,
Mm.
just because I'm not, I feel like there's always a way to make them improve being that teacher, right?
Yeah.
But, when you're a teacher, it's one thing. Kids are done with your class or whatever, they graduated, whatever. This, it's like, all right, how long do you hold them on? You know?
Yeah. Talk me through like an example of like hanging on to somebody too long, and how did you know it was too long? Is it only looking back in the rearview mirror?
Yeah, I don't think so. Cause I think that moment when you let them go, you just know. Cause every time I've done that, and I don't think I wait as long anymore, but every time I've done that, let someone go, the immediate relief that I feel and the team feels, you made the right decision.
Hmm.
I mean, it's almost immediate. And I think some of the problems that you run into is you start keeping toxic people or you start keeping people that aren't working as hard as the next one. They see it and they're like, well, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And so that, that for me, I think was something that I really have tried to work on, is just to make sure that, well, they say hire slow and fire fast, right? But I think bottom line wise, I think the two things that we're always looking for is how is it affecting the team and the culture?
Hmm.
And then how is it affecting our client and our work? And if both those things are negative, it's time.
Yeah.
And so how we do the rating and review now, it's a lot better and it's easy to track because it's all based on a 5-point system based on our 5 core values.
And so you just rank everybody
Yep.
based on those values.
So every 6 months, we have them fill out this sheet that we have that's a form, and they talk about good things, bad things, elephants in the room. Then they rate themselves on all 5 core values, 1 to 5, and then I go through it with them and I rate them live with them and talk about why. If you're getting 4s and 5s and a 3 here and there, you're great. If you're getting 1s and 2s, we need to have a conversation.
Do you ever struggle with relating some performance issue back to a core value? Like where you're kind of like massaging it to make sense?
Yeah, I think the one piece that we miss with our core values, I think a little bit is just, I don't even know how to describe it. So we have one of our core values is live to create. So everyone's creative. So we just put that on that your work is going to be the best work that you
Mhm.
have. I think attitude is no problem. We have that as a core value. But it's that, how long it takes you in your work day. Like getting work done has been
Mhm.
an issue that we've always had to deal with, is where, I'm Gen X, my wife is Gen X, most millennials too just know how to work,
Yeah.
right? So Gen Xers and millennials, they just know how to work. And they don't have to be told like when to do X project and stop that project and do this project. They just know and they can prioritize themselves. We've had to watch that because some of the younger generations, and I love my Gen Zs. I mean, we've got them and they're awesome. But we've had some that multitasking or not having clear direction on what they're supposed to
Mhm.
do at any given moment has been something that we've had to really work on, setting up processes to make sure that they're able to do that. But honestly, just like any other employee or any other employer, especially in our creative business, like you just have to figure things out because every day could be totally different. And it's going to be, agency life is tough and it's busy and clients are demanding. And so I think having a process in place for them to be able to get real work done is something that we've really had to work on.
Yeah. Just looping back to when you kind of first got started and you quit your job you're starting at zero. How long did it take you to get to the point where you like were replacing your income with the marketing agency?
Yeah. I mean, it hasn't happened yet. No.
It's still working on it.
Did that invoice come get paid yet? I got, yeah. Yeah, it probably took a good 2 years.
Okay.
You know, I had some money saved up and my wife was working a full-time job, thank goodness. And so we were able to, you know, make that work. But, and I was at the top-ish scale for being a teacher. So yeah, it took a good 2 years to be able to say, all right, now it's equal.
During those 2 years, did you ever think about, wow, this is taking way too long? Maybe should go back, get some more money?
Yeah, I mean, I always question, I still today too wonder, you know, if it was the right thing to do. And I just, you know, I wonder where I would be at. But I don't know though, man. I think being at the Hazlitt High School and teaching, I was kind of in a bubble, you know, met a bunch of great students and parents and colleagues that I still talk to today. But without starting this company, Michigan Creative, like I wouldn't have met anybody. I had no idea that there's this ecosystem of entrepreneurship and, you know, there's all these business podcasts and Tim Ferriss and Jocko and all. I mean, I would have never looked into any of that stuff. And I would have never got to sit across from, you know, the founder of Alro Steel. Never, you know, some of these manufacturing plants that we work for are family owned, 5th generation. You know, CF Burger is a creamery that we work with. It's the oldest creamery in Michigan.
Huh.
And started by his grandfather, you know, and I get to, you know, hang out with those guys.
Yeah.
And so I think that I never would have had that opportunity. And then also the opportunity to grow people,
Yeah.
to give them a life where they can support their family, that they have a career that they like. I think that to me, I would have never been able to do. I kind of got that when I was teaching.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I tell people right now, my wife and I, she's a business owner now too. And there, you know, used to be those commercials that you'd see and it'd be like, so you're thinking about starting a business. And back then we were like, yeah, do it. Now we're like, yeah, don't do that. She's a dummy. Don't do that.
Because it's so hard?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's hard. It's impossible. It's the hardest thing I've ever done.
What was the hardest part about it?
I think the hardest part night and day is cash flow and sales. I think the rest of the stuff you can figure out. I mean,
What was the largest you grew the company to?
yeah, so we had 21 people at one point.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the revenue look like for
I think we were at 1.8,
Okay.
1.6 at that time, and we're still about that. I mean, we'll still be close to 2 this year, with less employees.
Okay.
So I have, you know, I kind of came through this realization that I'm sure we'll get to of how to change that. But, you know, I think that's the hardest part. I mean, running a business is the hardest thing that you'll ever do. It's always, you know, when I say issues and problems, I don't mean them as a negative thing. It's just things that you always have to continue to do all the time. You have to take a look at all the good, and I try to tell my employees this too, all the great things. So, you know, the worst case, and also I like looking at the worst case scenario. And, you know, this is kind of comes from my sister years ago. She's like, all right, worst case scenario. So worst case scenario for Michigan Creative tomorrow, the server blows up, all my clients leave us, all the employees get good jobs tomorrow, just all happens tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I'll either go help Holly continue to build her business or go get a job. That's like the worst case scenario. And so thinking that helps, but then also taking a moment to realize all the good that you've done. And we don't do that because in business and in agency life, but in any business, people aren't always going, hey man, awesome job. Thanks a lot. Or man, this has been great. This is the best experience I've ever had. And I got to tell you, now we get that feedback and you get Google reviews and all that good stuff too. But typically the clients are going to want to talk to you when they're not happy.
Yeah.
And so staff, my project managers are frontline on this. I'm also frontline on this. And so we hear a lot of that. And I always have to remember, like, go back and let's look at 98% of everything else, right? Avalon Healing. You know, I just start listing off all these products and all these things that we've done and all the difference that we've made in the world. And that helps. So I think I need to consistently do that, both in my personal life, I think, and my professional life. Like I remember, you know, being so worried, you know, about a year and a half ago or a year ago, and most recently too, like I'm like, I don't even want to get out of bed.
Hmm.
And I remember telling myself, like, your life couldn't be any better. Like, your kids are all healthy. They're doing great things. Your wife's got a great business. Your house is awesome. You've got a business of employees that are doing a great job. So I think, those are the kind of moments when, as entrepreneurs, as hard as it gets in business owners, I think you have to really go back and start looking at all the great things. Like even this office, like, if you just write the story down and take your name out of it, like quit a job, started a business, bought a building. Holly was looking at buying her second building. Like we're more successful than most people that start businesses because most of them fail.
Yeah. Then why can't you, like, why didn't you want to get up out of bed in the morning and get to work and stuff like that?
Yeah, because I think at that time, there was a time about a year ago when everything there was a big moment, I think. And you talked through the dip, right? And that's what we're talking about here. And this is exactly what happened. And I think, cash flow was bad. I was worried about payroll. And there's been a handful of times where I'm like, I don't know where we're going to.
Was just cash flow bad, or was it also like profitability and revenue,
Yeah.
and it was also looking not good?
Yeah, it was like, I didn't see a way out. And I thought, I don't know if we can keep doing this. I don't know if I can keep doing this. And so just the stress of wondering, if we don't get this check in, or these couple checks in, like we're going to have to be a couple days late on payroll.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of families.
Yeah.
Where you and I, we could miss a payroll or two probably because we could, obviously my spouse works, so we could do that. But some of our people, they can't.
Yeah.
And that's a stressor. I mean, that's got to be the number one thing. I think that when I talk to people, that's their biggest fear.
Yeah, especially if you have this this manifesto written about taking care of other people and stuff, and now you're looking at your bank account and you can't take care of them the way that you want to take care.
Yeah,
of
I'm a
them.
fraud.
Yeah,
I'm a fraud, a liar, and I've thought many times like I'm taking that stupid manifesto off.
And you never have.
No, haven't done it. Stuck to our core values, but I'm like, that's dumb. That's not true. None of it's true. Like people would not have great jobs and I'd have to, or not have a great time here or whatever, do some stuff. I'd have to fire them and then they'd be mad at me. So I'm like, well, all this other stuff's just BS, it's not true. I'm an imposter. Right. And, have kept it on there and start kind of Sean in the back of my head's going, man, just stick with it.
Yeah.
Just keep pushing that. So we haven't taken it off, but I remember, we were talking, my wife and I, and we were like, I think it's time to do something different. I think I want to get down to like 2 people, maybe. And that's when we were pretty, pretty staffed up.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the plan. I remember trying to, she's like, I don't know what's going on with you, but you got to do something because, she could tell. And she's like, you've got to change something. You're not happy. We got to do something. I don't care what you do, but we got to do something different.
Do you think if you weren't struggling with payroll and cash flow and stuff like that, you wouldn't have felt the stress? Like that's primarily where that stress was coming from.
It's always that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the trigger, I think, for me. It's always that. It's not the work. We've had clients that haven't been super happy with something. And so they're not with us anymore. Some are mutual breakups. Some I should have let go at that time, but some we screwed up, to be frank. I don't care about any of that. I mean, I don't care about employees who don't need to be here anymore if they're mad. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, that doesn't bother me. It's that cash flow piece for me that's always been. If I could fix that, find a way to fix it, and I'm always working on it, I think I can do this forever.
Why do you think that cash flow has always been a problem?
I think 2 things. One, we never really priced ourselves where we should. I think, we're always,
Because
I don't know. I always was more focused on getting the sale than getting the right sale, I think. And I think project-based agency work is tough.
yeah,
I think going from project to project is tough work because you've got this dilemma of we need to get this project work in every month. And every month you got to hit the certain sales number to make sure that we have enough, right? So you're profitable. And so you'd get all these projects in and then everybody'd be very stressed. So sometimes you'd have to staff up a little bit or figure out how you're going to get it all done.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd get it all done. And then you're like, oh man, we got to get more sales in. And the cycle just kind of repeats. And so for us, we were always going, for, I think, multiple small projects versus what we've kind of done over the last couple of years, or especially this last year, is really going after those larger ones and then trying to figure out this way to get monthly recurring revenue, because that's the model.
And how are you getting monthly recurring revenue now? Like, how do you change that model to shift it more into that?
Yeah, so we're working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Fair.
still, we're working on it.
I want to circle back to what we were just talking about when you were starting to feel like, I don't know if I want to run this
Yeah.
anymore. How long did that season last for?
Well, kind of on and off, sometimes still today, I'm sitting here going, I'm still thinking like, do I really want to continue to do this?
Yeah.
But I think that was a good 3 or 4 months. And, that moment where things change for me is, I love this story because I still feel it, is we were doing this morning thing where we'd get up at 5. There's a book called 5 a.m. Club. And we're like, we're doing it, and we still kind of do. But so her and I both get up, and we would do our thing separately in different rooms. She would, check everything, and I would meditate, read, and those kind of things. And I remember I got this book. I ordered this book on Instagram, 'cause I'm a big book nerd. And so they targeted me perfectly, right?
Yeah.
And so it was this book, and it was a pack, not a pack, what do they call it? Like a book set, whatever. And so it came by Steven Pressfield. I didn't know who Steven Pressfield was, but it looked cool, and it was a box, and it had his book in it, and it was signed, and it had some artist drawings and some cards and a notebook. And I don't know if I have it here, but in the open up the first page, and it's in Sharpie, and it's to Brian, keep writing, Steven Pressfield, and the Sharpie bled. I'm a real nerd, so the Sharpie bled through. I'm like, oh my God, this is real,
Yeah.
And it was cool, man, because this guy, I think he's 60 something, 70. And he said he was overnight success, but it took him 50 years to do it.
Yeah.
And the first drawing by this great artist that he was friends with was just a pencil drawing of this character leaning over this guy in bed. And it said, what time does resistance greet you? And I was like, first thing. And I'd never heard that term, resistance. And I went out, my wife's sitting in her chair, and I had my headphone kind of off, and she's like, I was just looking at her. She's like, what are you doing, weirdo? And I'm like, I figured it out. And this year I was 50, right? I figured out what's had me this whole time. And she's like, what? I go, it's resistance. And she's like, well, what is that? It's like, resistance is that creative person that is just resistance on doing what they know they can do, or doing what they're most powerful at, and actually just doing it and seeing the value in what they have to offer. Like, I think at the time, I didn't think I was any different than anyone else. It's just another marketing company. Everybody else had it all figured out. Just another business owner that was probably going to fail. I was a former teacher. What right did I have to start a company? And I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have a marketing degree, And, he talks about this resistance and how, all creative people that he knew, have it. He has it, but he kept going and he kept doing it. Stephen King, same thing, got rejected. Talks about all these famous people, and we hear these stories all the time, that I think it's this resistance, which is this lack of belief in what you have as a gift to offer, and someone wants it. And for me, that really changed and kind of opened up. And, we went from, let's shut the company down and run 1 or 2 people, to, no, let's try this.
Yeah.
Let's get smaller. Let's get more focused. Let's start really focusing on what you want to do and what you want to provide, what you think your superpower is. And that really kind of kickstarted me into starting my coaching program, starting my fractional thing up that I needed to do, finishing and writing, starting to write the book, and finished it 8 months later. And kind of that, to me now, I think, and talking about imposter syndrome, to me has really helped get us to where we are today.
Yeah.
Through that dip.
When you were kind of in the middle of that dip and before you had read the book, do you feel like you could have identified like what that feeling was? Like, it seems like there's this word that you read in this short little sentence.
Yeah. And I didn't have it, I described it I think at the time for me, it was sort of like this dark corner feeling like,
Would you call it depression?
yeah, yeah, I think so for sure.
Yeah.
Depression and anxiety, self-doubt. Um, that was the moment that, I started to think about all these great things that I had built, had a child at 19 and finished college,
Mhm.
starting there, which to me, it was like, yeah, well, that's what I had to do. But talking to like business coaches and people that knew me, they're like, what? How did you do that? I'm like, it was no problem. It was easy. I took her to my internship in a changing her diaper in the middle of the night, because I had to do the overnight, changing her diaper on the studio room floor,
Wow.
while I was studying for a test
Yeah.
and working my internship. Never thought it was any different. It was just what we had to do. And then, raise 3 other children. So 4 children that are all, I mean, they're the great kids, man. They're just they're perfect. Not perfect, whatever, but they're just really good, honest,
Mhm.
hardworking kids. And then, ran a nationally recognized TV program, started a company and employed 100 people over the course of the last, but I never thought it had anything to do with me.
Yeah.
I just thought, of course, like, the issue with running a business is that we're so isolated, and all we do is look at people that do a really great job. Amazon, Steve Jobs, you're like, oh my God, these guys all had imposter syndrome. But we don't, all we hang out with is people that are very successful. Like, we just assume that everyone can do what we can do, when in reality, very few businesses make it. And I remember in 5 years in, 5 years into running Michigan Creative, I was sitting mowing and listening to a podcast by Michael Gerber. I was listening to his book E-Myth,
Okay.
and didn't really know what E-Myth was. I'm like, all right, I'm going to listen to this. And his first couple lines out of the book, or the first chapter, talks about, the first thing he said was like, in the first 5 years, 90% of the businesses fail.
Mhm.
And I was like, holy, it's 5 years. We made it. And I swear to God, the next line out of his mouth was, and then in the next 5 years, the 10% that make it, 90% of those fail. And I'm like, yay, shit. And I remember doing that, going, I made it. Oh man, we didn't make it. I'm like,
Still a long ways to
still
go.
a long ways to go. And I think, you know, kind of putting that into perspective, like all of these things had everything to do with me. And I think it just assumed that, I think high performing people, and having imposter syndrome, my wife has it too, I think, but we think it's a good thing if it doesn't get you into that depression mode.
Yeah.
And because why we think imposter syndrome is good is because I think it's made me who I am. Because if I didn't have imposter syndrome, I wouldn't continuously try to make sure that I was proving him wrong.
Yeah, like it makes you better. It gives you something to fight
Yeah,
against.
because I'm always worried that someone's going to find out
Yeah.
that maybe I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Which, you'd think after having 4 kids and being 51, you'd think, and I'm getting better at this, to not really care anymore. But I don't know. I think it's that creative person, the hardworking person that's driven to success. Like, and somebody would look at me and say, man, they got everything going on and they're just working their tails off and they're super successful. Like, I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
It's just, for me, it's just, and I think most people don't. I don't feel that way. I feel like I'm just doing what I need to do to get through. I mean, some things are still not working today,
Mhm.
but knowing that there's going to be a way to figure it out. I think for me, all it did was simply allow me to know that I had to put in the work in. I had to put the work in very strategically, because I had everything I needed to right that ship.
Yeah.
And I was just too afraid to do it because I felt like it wouldn't work. Because we've tried it. But doing this for 14 years, you're always going to try it.
So what'd you do to start righting the ship and getting cash flow back into a positive space? And
Yeah, I think for me, it was knowing that my superpower was 2 things: was inspiring the team and sales. And so I knew that I had to time block my schedule every day to make sure I'm doing those 2 things every day. So
Mhm.
whether that's a text to employees, whether it's giving support to them, whether it's telling them good job, whatever it is. And then also, what am I doing during that sales block? Whether whatever it is, I'm calling, I'm emailing, I'm um, making a Facebook post, doing Twitter, writing a blog, whatever sales tool you want to use. I think that's one of the things that I knew that I had to do because you slack off and you don't feel like doing it, especially when you're not in a good space. Because one, you feel like, why would I do sales if I really don't think I'm going to do a good job for this
Yeah.
company? So why would you're a terrible salesperson because you don't believe it
Mm.
and they can see it. And so with this new attitude, I mean, I could sell anything because I believed it and nothing had changed. The work was still the same. We were doing good work. I don't think there's ever been a spot. I mean, of course, we've done some things that haven't been good, but I don't think there's ever been a place in the company's history where we've done bad work consistently.
Yeah.
So I needed to feel more confident. So that really helped, is that confidence piece. We closed some big deals, and I think nothing really changed. I was still using the same case studies and the sell sheets and the work that we've done, right? That was all still
Mhm.
working. It was just simply my belief and being able to sell at the price point which I knew we were worth.
Yeah.
I started to have this realization that I can't continue to lose people and try to replace them because of kind of where we were. Like being the size of company that we were, it was hard for us to compete at the salaries that I thought we should.
Mm.
And so we decided to slim down. I think we got to like 8 or 9. And then we decided to find a way to outsource 2 things. I knew we burnt John out on the web,
Uh-huh.
and we've tried to outsource a few times. Not all of it, but outsource the development of it,
Yeah.
and found that solution.
Nice.
And I was like, man, like I'm pure, like to me, that's still pure genius. Like, like I want to, one thing I've done right. I mean, that was a good move for the company that
Huh.
we found. So that was a good move. And I think the other piece was outsourcing some of our project management, which sounds like that would never work. But
Yeah,
we
that sounds bad.
found this company called Dot and Co. And that was my other second, like I picked the right company. Because I've picked lots of wrong ones, but their business model to me is pure genius. And they have that recurring revenue model. And so all Dot and Co does is they provide project managers for creative agencies.
Okay. How long from when you had the realization that resistance is this thing that's keeping you down, and to the point where you felt like, okay, I have this figured out, things are starting to move in the right direction?
Yeah, it was, that moment was pretty impactful. Like that week was a really good week.
Wow.
It was kind of like, Holly's like, you got your step back in it. You're like, you should just tell, we're really close and your partner can tell. Right.
Yeah.
And, and I think it was pretty immediate. And then that lasted for, a good 3 months. But then I remember, we ran into some more issues and I think we lost a couple employees
Mm-hmm.
and, lost a customer or something. I can't remember. And it kind of started to creep in a little bit. And so I don't think it's ever gone. I think you're always going to question that. And I think it's always something for me that I always have to watch that. And I think it's been like that. I don't think it's just because I started this business. I think I've always been like that.
Yeah. What do you do when you start feeling those feelings coming back up of despair and frustration, resistance?
Yeah. I talked to my sons about this. My sons are in college and one's out of college. And I think for me, that 10 seconds to 20 seconds, when that's starting to feel, is to go back and start thinking about all the things that got you to where you are. And I think today, I was talking about my 10-year-old daughter last night was having a hard time. She's like, oh, I got all these thoughts in my head. And it's like, I'm thinking about some of these things I said to someone. And I'm like, all right, let's take a minute and let's just think about what we have and what we're doing today and what we've built so far. And I think for me, I start to go back to thinking about some of the people that are here now to where they were. And I also start thinking about some of the work that we're doing now that we weren't doing. And then I look at some key clients that I'm just so proud of the work that we did for them. And that usually gets me out of it. And it's just, I think that self-talk, which sounds so dumb, like, coming from a guy, this manly man that you're supposed to be. And I think, a CEO whatever. I think it sounds dumb that we still question ourselves. And
Yeah.
I think it's something that I think most people, all people that I've ever talked to, do the same thing. And so that word resistance helps, but I also think looking back at what we've built, knowing that because of me and the people that I've surrounded myself with, that we've gotten to where we are. I mean, 14 years running an agency is not bad.
It's not bad at all.
Not bad at all.
You beat the odds
Yeah.
over and over and over.
When I tell people that, they're like, wow, 14 years. I'm like, yeah, but it's been hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, well, so yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I'm not great at it still today. I mean, there's still some rough spots, but I think, I think the two things, one, that you have, I have, whatever I need. I don't need to take a course. I don't need to read a book. I don't need to hire someone. I've got it. I can do it. I'm not stupid. I mean, at very least, I've got experience, right?
Yeah.
So I think that helps. And knowing that also the worst case scenario, which I don't like looking at doom and gloom, but, is I can just get a job.
Yeah.
I mean, or I can just shut everything down and just consult, probably make more money.
Yeah. What do you think you learned about yourself, though, going through this?
Yeah. I think, I think that piece that I've learned is that one, because sometimes I don't feel creative, because I don't, like, you wouldn't want me to design your logo.
Yeah.
I can show you our first one. I can still edit video, but the team doesn't let me shoot much anymore. But I can't build your website. And so I was like, well, maybe I'm not a creative person. But for me, I've learned that I'm really good at two things: solving problems in a creative way and inspiring people to do great things.
Yeah.
And I've always been that way. Like, that's my thing. Like, every class I taught, I was always like, I want to make sure that this is the best class I've ever taken. And so knowing that I'm really not any different than before, I think understanding that leadership piece that I've always tried to build in other people, then just maybe then I'm actually a pretty good leader.
Yeah. What inspired you to write the book, The Lonely CEO?
Desperation. No, I think, for me,
Because you're trying to solve this problem with your business,
Yeah.
and like how to grow it and how to scale it and how to deal with employees stuff, and then writing a book is a whole other.
yeah, my business coach said, stop doing that right now. And I was starting a course then. I wanted to get the podcast going too. He's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're distracting yourself. And he was right, but I didn't listen. But I've always wanted to be an author. I've had a fiction book that I've been writing for 20, 30, however long. It's never going to be done. But I'm fascinated by authors and books. And I think for me, the two things that inspired me to do it was that hard period where I've got to share this with someone else. And then also reading a bunch of guru BS books, kind of like, for me, was always stressful, because you read the Tim Ferriss and you read all these people and they're like, yeah, man, you only got to work a couple hours a day, take an ice bath, get a massage, do this, and then go and do deep work for an hour. And that's all. I'm like, listen, man, my dog is pooping all over the floor right now. My daughter is so mad at me because I forgot to take her to skate night at the elementary school. My wife's, worried about her business, and, I can't find a matching, whatever, the daily problems of a parent, which is, I think, for 90% of business owner, is reality. Like, yeah, would we all like to go live on an island and work remote, take our kids there? Sure. And can you do it? I guess so. Reality is, we got kids a kid is still in school. We've got employees that are causing issues. We've got clients that are happy. And so I think for me, I wanted to write a book that really talked about, I wanted to call it How Not to Run a Business. And I thought, that's a really good title.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, The Lonely CEO kind of came up, because it is a lonely spot.
It is.
To be on top. And I don't feel like I'm on top. As a matter of fact, I feel like I'm on the bottom, what most owners do.
Yeah. That's probably why it's so lonely.
Yeah. And I think the lonely piece is, how I describe it, is, one, if you're worried, you can't tell your employees. I've done that. Big mistake. The minute you say, hey, sales are a little bit down, I'm hoping that blah, 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 everybody starts talking. Bring it. What's going on? Are we losing our jobs?
Yeah.
So can't do that. They don't get it, and they shouldn't. I mean, they are, at the end of the day, they are just an employee.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that, but if you look at it like that, you can't tell your friends because they work real jobs. They think you're loaded. They think you have it made. Sometimes you can't tell your spouse because you don't want her to worry that maybe, and so I think, and they say, well, get a coach, get a therapist, go join CEO groups. And I think that's all well and good and that helps, but still at the end of the day, it's just you and no one cares about you. And, they don't care that you're stressed. They don't care that you're worried about this. They just see that you have a nice house and everything's great. You're loaded.
Yeah.
And not that I don't think my employees really think that, but I think that's why it's that lonely place.
Yeah.
I think. And the reality is that we all have lives outside of this. And so I wrote that in a way that I wanted to give people what I really felt, and I know what they feel. I wanted them to simply believe in themselves and know that there was a way by doing simple things. Like, you don't have to have this big, huge funnel. You don't have to read all these books and put all this stuff in place. Just to do some simple things to help your business run and help you really feel like maybe you're the one.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to today's episode. That was Brian Town and how he overcame the resistance. He actually wrote a whole book about it called The Lonely CEO, which is an amazing book. I'll link it in the show notes. Now, we will launch episodes every other week, so make sure to like or subscribe wherever you are listening to this so you get notified when we launch the next episode. And what would really mean the world to me is if you would head over to throughthedip.com and sign up to our email list. I get this little notification every time somebody signs up, and it seriously makes my day. Catch you at the next episode.